Welcome, folks.
Perfect.
This is, I think, the fifth installment of our Safe Tooling Special Interest Group. And today we have the folks from Planview with us, and I think I'm going to hand to them. Joe Campbell, they are all yours.
Thanks, Sam. Really appreciate it. And thank you all for joining. My name is Joe Campbell. I'm the country manager for Planview for Australia and New Zealand. I have been with Planview for 8 years. I've been in and around the portfolio management space for about 20 over a range of different vendors. I'll pause on getting Adam to introduce himself. We thought we'd give you a bit of perspective and context on Planview as an organisation, our methodology and our ethos and what we're trying to do in the market. And then I'll hand to Adam, who will actually take you through how Planview as a platform supports scaled, agile, and safe in particular. So, Adam, if you want to move on to the next slide. Um, so again, as you would see in a lot of organizations, you just get it to drill through. We see a lot of organizations who've got a lot of work going on. It's often in disparate tools. It's down in delivery tools like Jira and ADO and others, hopefully some in Planview. But what we're about is actually making sure that we're not just doing the work well, but we're doing the right work. So for Planview, for the platform that I'm going to talk you through as an introductory couple of slides here today, it's really about how do we understand our organizational strategy? What is our long-term plans? What are we trying to achieve? How do we then break that down into meaningful either programs of work or initiatives or portfolios, for example? And then how do we align people's objectives and key results either at a department level, organization level, to ensure that we're tracking against the right metrics that we need to determine whether we're informing our strategy, whether we're delivering on the things that we said we would. So getting that strategy, making sure that we're doing the right work. So you'll see the continuum that sits around planning and delivery. What that allows organizations to do is move to a more of an agile way of doing planning. So we talk about big room planning, we talk about quarterly planning. Most organizations find annual planning just so painful, just because there's data in multiple different systems in Excel and finance systems. We can bring all of that to life and allow organizations to move into a more regular planning cycle. So that firstly, they're focusing on what are the right things we should be doing, how do we prioritize them, and then making sure that we're doing the work well and we're delivering the results that we set out to. So how do we tie all that together? Adam, next slide. It's with the Planview platform. So regardless of the solution type, and again, we break this down. We saw Em and Adrienne at Gartner last week, and we pretty much align our solutions to the Gartner quadrants that you would see: strategic portfolio management, enterprise agile planning, and value stream management. Most of the organizations I'm talking to at the moment are actually doing all of that and needing to have visibility of that. Some are still doing traditional waterfall type work, right? They want to be able to look at stage gates and they want to be able to do traditional planning around metrics of resources and budgets. But then they're also starting to move to more agile ways of working. So how do we start to plan around, and what Adam's going to showcase today around SAFE? And then as part of an acquisition we made of a company called TaskTop. I don't know if you've heard of Dr. Mick Kirsten, fantastic thought leader in terms of moving from project to product operating models. His flow metrics and his flow framework are actually embedded within Safe 6.0, and I won't steal too much of Adam's thunder. But how do we help organizations on that transformation journey and not trying to switch to Agile overnight? And that's something that we're very passionate about. It's not a flick and switch. We're not a digital native often that we can just start up and be Agile. It's helping them take that journey and doing it all in the one platform. I won't talk through the capabilities here. Adam's going to showcase a lot of those, but it's really around the left-hand side, top down, bottom up, coming from the right-hand side. But you'll notice down in the bottom echelon of the slide here is, we are not going to replace absolutely everything. We want to connect down into the tools. So as part of our flow framework and our flow fabric, we've actually got connectors down into about 60 tools in the SDLC lifecycle. So that allows you to surface up information, look at flow, and give you visibility to be able to see things like dependencies, which I'm sure you're hearing a lot of, and the complexities that they cause stores, integrations into financial systems, integrations into HR systems, so that we've got the source of record for actual cost, and also teams and people to be able to plan with them. Just on to the next slide, Adam. So don't just take mine and Adam's word for it. We are a leader as Gartner and Forrester. So we'd like to take a step back. But you'll see here, they've actually haven't re-released the Enterprise Agile Planning Quadrant. The last one they did was 2022, but we were a leader in that as well. But again, helping organizations on that journey from traditional to Agile. Next slide, Adam. And again, don't just take our word for it, take our customers' word for it. So, the thing to really take in mind here is obviously big organizations who are on a digital journey, like your financial services and insurance companies, that's obviously going to be a sweet spot for the adoption of safe and more agile delivery ways of working. But Planview works across a range of different industries. And the good thing is we take a lot of the learnings and best practice from these industries and build that back into the platform as best practice, so that people can adopt different ways of working, so that they can learn from what is a life sciences organization who've got multi-year programs doing, as opposed to someone who's in more of an iterative and delivery approach. So again, thank you so much for the time. I know you're all keen to get out of PowerPoint and get into the platform. So I'll hand you to our fantastic solution consultant, Adam Chimino. So thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, Joe. So we can progress here a little bit. Okay. Right. So obviously thanks for allowing us to present to the team and the wider audience today. We are going to obviously focus on a lot of the scaled agile, safe, and how the platforms aligns to a lot of those processes and thoughts. As a quick agenda and a bit of an overview, we'll have a quick overview of the EAP solution within Planview, and then we'll start to dive down into specific things around the safe components, around Kanban systems, backlogs, managing delivery, measuring flow, and some of the PI planning processes that are done within the platform as well. So we'll be able to cover off hopefully all the things that you see there in that agenda. We spoke earlier about if you want to start asking questions, Joe is across most of these things as well. He may be able to answer all of them, hopefully, and then we can circle back on any ones that we miss out on. So when it comes to enterprise agile planning, when we speak to a lot of the customers in this space, they come to us with common challenges, common expectations around what they're trying to achieve in this space, and we look at it in the frame of mind around being able to visualize work and flow of work at multiple levels. And again, that's a key thing that we'll go into in these sessions, where it's not just at one team or one value stream or one particular product that we're looking at. They want to be able to get an understanding at an enterprise level, right? And our enterprise agile planning solutions does that. We want to get an understanding around flow and how that works within the product, and both at product and enterprise levels as well. Joe mentioned it earlier, connecting strategy to execution is a key part of this. So being able to say, okay, here are our initiatives, and here are the key things that we want to be able to deliver, and how does all that work align back to that? OKRs, prioritization, integration is a key thing that our customers are all wanting to be able to do with all the potential systems that they have in their ecosystem, right? So it's great to be able to say, okay, I want to be able to understand flow and all the work that's going on. But when we visit a lot of our customers and a lot of the people that we speak to, there are so many different systems within their eco environment that trying to get access to those is really difficult. So integration's a big space, and be able to collaborate in this as well. So obviously understanding that there are people that who are executing work and be able to collaborate in this space as well. Value stream management, again, it was a key thing that came out with in SAFe 6.0. and being able to get an understanding of different types of metrics and dashboards and get understanding of value stream analytics, right? So being able to really dive down into how work is traveling, the type of work that's traveling, how efficiently it's going, and being able to get an understanding of where the potential bottlenecks are, and then being able to test out different theories within your processes to be able to enhance that, right? So again, value stream management is made up of all those things. So I'm going to go into different areas of the SAFe methodology, sort of one by one, just at a high level, and have a look at how Planview meets them. Then we'll go into the tool to be able to show how that fits in. So we talk about Kanban system within SAFe, and then how does Planview address that? So we can talk about the concepts of being able to have Kanban boards and processes that align to different organizations and or frameworks like SAFe allows it to, and being able to get an understanding of the types of work with different cards and the visualization that Kanban boards really represent within an organization, and be able to get an understanding of what's happening, is it what's actually been completed, what's coming in those backlogs, right? So we meet those all those criterias and those capabilities within Agile Place and the Kanban solutions. Related to Kanban in association within the SAFe framework is not just having that one Kanban view of a particular team or a particular value stream or a particular product. It's being able to have that enterprise view at portfolios, teams of teams, solution trains, release trains, and then individual teams, and then being able to connect all those back up through those layered Kanban boards as well, right? So they're going to be the few key things that we'll look at to start with. Okay. All right. So let's jump into the tool. All right. So Planview, and I'm assuming no one, or do people have any idea? Have they seen Planview before, just as a general feedback, or is this first time for this user group? Once I can see once. I can see once first time. Okay, no worries. Okay, so again, some generic things. 100% web-based application. It's a platform which covers off multiple capabilities. This landing page that we're looking at here is very much a persona-based landing page. So if you think of the different types of roles that the SAFe framework sort of looks at, whether it's portfolio level roles, release train engineers, different types of people and different roles within the frameworks are going to want to be able to look at different things within their personas. And so these dashboards and these views can be configured with these widgets to meet those individual requirements. So what we're looking at here, I just created a SAFe Agile board for potentially a portfolio manager, release train maybe engineer who wants to be able to get an understanding of risks, portfolio insights from value stream management, some high level metrics that we can see here around flow, as well as some high level information around OKR progress, right? So we're starting to surface up information that the platform is holding and managing for us, but being able to have these quick views to analyze, and then if I want to be able to go into that, I can. And we'll get back to these OKRs and the flow metrics when we start to look at that. Roadmaps of the portfolio of work are essentially part of the solution as well. But I want to drive straight into portfolio Kanban, and this is where the crux of the enterprise agile planning solution then starts to come in. So before we go into the actual boards itself, I wanted to just take a look at the whole connected components to it, right? So when we set up the boards within an organization and we have this connectivity, we start to break it down to say, well, we may have value streams, and we'll have a high-level value stream at the portfolio level, and we might have then program boards underneath them and team boards underneath that. So our connectivity across the Kanban boards are essentially defined at the application level, and then we start to dive down into individual boards to get an understanding of the work. So I'm going to dive down into this portfolio Kanban board here. And for those who don't use online Kanbans or haven't used online Kanban boards before, a lay of the land, essentially this is a place where work can get created. And if you look at the board working left to right, we start off here with a funnel of work, or we can call this all of our not started work, which includes all of our backlog area. Okay, so the cards can represent different items on the actual board, and those items, or the different types of boards, can represent different things. So I've just clicked on the legend here, and as an organization, you can define the types of cards that we're looking at here. So there could be initiatives, there could be epics, there could be projects, there could be enablers. Every type of work that an organization potentially could undertake from an enterprise agile planning perspective can then be represented with a different card type. And the card type's important because we then want to be able to start to analyze different types of work and how it's flowing through the boards and through the ecosystem as well. Okay. So from left to right, as work gets created, it then starts to move through a process which is defined or aligned to a framework, e.g. like SAFe. So this is, again, the portfolio level of what or how SAFe would work, is that our large rocks, our big epics, our big initiatives that we're trying to track, we're starting them through a funnel and a review process and an analysis process coming into a backlog. So we're not actually starting any of it here before a point in time that these pieces of work either get into a value stream or part of the execution process. Being able to connect the pieces of work, and we talked about the connection back to strategy, back to the different pieces of work is key from a visibility perspective, but also being from an organization perspective to get an understanding of how all the individual pieces start to line up, right? So I've just clicked on this initiative called Embrace the CX Disruption, and it's an active initiative that we've got running within this particular environment, but we've got a couple of big sort of rocks, some that are finished. We've got some epics that are finished, some epics that are in execution, and an epic that is potentially in that backlog and not started yet. Each of the cards then can get broken down into more information. So at the card level, we start to analyze different things such as customized fields for reporting, parent and child relationships. So I can then start to break down these big rocks into features and user stories and or other levels or things that the actual teams are going to break it down into. And these cards can actually then live on a board which is related to those individual teams. So if I click on this feature, which is related to the epic, it's actually going to bring me one level down into the board and the relationships with the board. So this is now teams and teams of teams, right? So this teams board, again, is going to be reflective of the SAFe process that the teams will follow, right? So it still has an intake and backlog process. It has a PI planning area, but we start to capture other things around, risks and other elements within these particular boards here that the teams are actually going to be undertaking. If I look at connections from this area, we can get or start to get an understanding of the interactions between not just cards within the boards and in the individual teams, but also where they sit on the portfolio boards that we were just looking at. Okay, so our connection all the way through from the teams and the work that's being done at one level is also related back up into the work that is being reflected up in the portfolio level. And because everything's connected, as soon as things get completed, the progress of the high level items, whether it's by card or job size, also then gets reflected up through the portfolio lens. Were there any questions in the chat or anything that anyone wanted to just raise about the boards, how they work, how they connect, cards and card types and connections? Okay.
Adam, I had a
So
question. Is it possible for hi, it's Anthony Little here. Is it possible for the view to zoom out a bit further so it, or you might be just doing it right now. I'm interested to see it from a total obeyer perspective, right? So that entire visualization of how all the work is going.
when you mean by obeyer visualization, can you be a little bit more specific?
Obeyer just comes from that word about being able to see the whole and see the whole as it is, right? So it's going out, zooming out, being able to see the whole, and then zoom in on the detail as we need.
Yeah, and so again, you're talking about using this for big room planning, right, or aligned to that, Anthony. So, so what you're able to see is in those columns, see everything that's sort of in the backlog. You can see things that haven't yet been planned or prioritized within the current PI, and then you're seeing those at those various different levels, right? So, yeah, so showing that whole end-to-end process by the zoom out. But then zooming into the columns or the actual part of that increment that are important to you at any point in time.
Yes, and it's not like they're separate views. It's more like being able to go up and down the elevator to 30,000 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So I think, I mean, obviously being able to, hide and show different types of information that are going to be reflective of what you're focusing on, can be done through these views as well. Okay.
And Adam, there's a question or a comment there from Lim as well, just about ADO. And so, yes, Lim, we're going to show the connection down to ADO and into Jira and other team tools. And so, yeah, where organizations are using those, we've got bidirectional integrations with them. So down at the story level, if people don't want to leave ADO and they don't want to leave Jira, they can stay in their tools of choice. But we also have organizations who they're not deep into software development and they just need a simple Kanban solution to progress the work, which Adam will show you. They can use this and directly update the work in here. The key is what sits above all of this is our lean portfolio management solution, which we won't show too much of today, but then rolling that all up and getting a perspective on the work and how it's performing, but then aligning that to finances and funding and budget to give that holistic LPM view as well. So, yeah, we'll definitely show how we connect down into the team tools, but also you'll see how you could use this tooling to actually replace some of those if you wish.
Thanks, Joe.
No worries. Okay. All right. So I suppose the next, again, sort of subject area that we'll look at is, I suppose, the management of the backlog with Kanban. And again, we'll look at it through different levels, whether it's a portfolio level, solution or release train level and team Kanban. The concepts within the Kanban boards are going to be almost identical. So when it comes to portfolio Kanban, again, the key things we start to look at is sort of things like WIP limits and being able to get an understanding of how much work can be undertaken by the individual teams or the organization as a whole, and being able to set those limits and the lane policies within those boards as they go through the different stages of the process. And again, those types of things then start to apply down to the individual teams, because the way that those individual teams then start to work may be a little bit different across teams as well. So depending on capacity, depending on the way that they manage story points and or number of items that they want to be able to look at from a backlog perspective, then we can then start to tailor those specific I suppose rules and the ways of working for those individual teams into the boards themselves. Okay. Team Kanbans, again, could be a little bit different, right? So the way that we would set up a backlog at the portfolio level compared to at the release train versus the individual teams are going to be a little bit different, right? The concept's the same. The way that the Kanban boards that are set up are going to be just slightly different. So again, we'll start top down. So if we have a look at the portfolio Kanban and the whole concept of the portfolio Kanban, just refresh that. Everything you can probably see right at the top here, we have these lanes that are associated to at a high level work that is either not started or finished. And then in between these high level items is where we start to build out the individual lanes. You'll be able to notice here that based on the numbers that are applied to each individual lanes is where we then start to set things like width limits and the lane policies, right? So as we start to look at the backlog at the portfolio level, we're capping the type of work and the work that potentially may go into the backlog at a limit of 20,000. Now that could be a combination of user stories and features and everything that is compiled underneath that essentially drives that number. The boards themselves can be set up to have multiple iterations of this if that's a requirement. Before at some point in time, then the release train engineers and the portfolio managers are agreeing on what those backlogs are before they move them into value stream execution. And again, within here, you'll be able to start to look at in this example, we have some cross-release train work that's being done across multiple ones, but then we have release trains that are going to be specific to a particular product area or group, and they will each have their own WIP limit. I suppose areas where they'd be able to contain the amount of work that they get done within a particular PI. So as an example, if I start to drag all of these epics over into this Art Avengers one, you'll be able to see that the WIP limit on the number of epics that they can do within any one particular planning item is 7. As soon as I hit that, the screen behind it starts to go a little bit diagonal. If I try to add another one in there, it's then going to start to go, well, hang on a minute, we've violated what the lane says for this particular release train. And as a release train engineer or portfolio manager, I can actually override it if I choose to. However, that's going to then be recorded from a process perspective, and it may mean that we need to come back and revisit this release train's capacity to be able to actually go and deliver this particular work. So I'm not going to do that for now. I'm going to leave them to only do their 7. Okay. Okay, so from a portfolio perspective, these boards are essentially designed that for any new work that comes into this particular area, we default the cards to sort of sit in that funnel area before they're being reviewed, analyzed, and before it goes into the backlog. If I take a look at the team or teams of teams board, you'll notice that the entirety of that not started area or the whole backlog area actually then starts to introduce a PI planning process as part of it, right? So you'll be able to get an understanding here that it also has a funnel. So any new lower level work that may come under the epic, like features and potential user stories, if they decide to use that at this level, goes through a funnel. It may go through some ranking and prioritization, which we'll go to in a moment, a refined backlog before we then start to move into this PI planning area. So again, we speak to customers a lot about QBRs, trimester planning, at what levels are we doing this and how do we define our iterations? And as Joe mentioned earlier, we may have teams that we work with organizations who aren't developers. They don't use ADO, they don't use Jira, but they're working in an agile manner, and they may just use Agile Place as an area to be able to track their work. Right? So we'll have a team here called Team Charlie who are just using Agile Place. On the other hand, we might have teams here who are trying to plan through different types of through different iterations, who all do all their work and execution in ADO, right? So we can connect into ADO and start to synchronize work between the two through this planning process as well. And in the bottom area, we have Team Beta, who are maybe a Jira team, right? So they do all their work in Jira, all the execution is done in there, and again, we can sync through integration all the work and the progress that's been done in that space all the way through to Jira. And just to show you an example of that, when I click on one of these cards within the Jira loan, it's got an external link out to Atlassian, which is Jira's namesake, and then all the work and the connection through the individual projects that have been done here on the Jira side are then sent back and forwards, good bi-directional integration, back through these enterprise agile planning cards, back all the way up through to the Epic, all the way into the portfolio level. Okay, so we've got an understanding across the development teams what work they're doing, and we don't want to disrupt their work. So as to Joe's point, we're not a replacement for Jira. We're not a replacement for ADO. Right? We want to be able to get an understanding of the work that's been done, but how that relates back up through to the epics and then the overall portfolio management side as well.
Yeah, and just to cover that off, I think it's pretty important that we talk about the fact that most organizations that we run into have multiple instances of Jira, or some are using Jira, some are using ADO, some people are still using Rally, right? So to be able to, even for an organization, to be able to get an idea of what's happening in each of those instances, to be able to see cross-team dependencies, just to be able to sit on top of those and give some visibility about the work and some of the challenges in planning. That's a really simple and quick exercise for Planview to start up and give that visibility. So that's another point. And Adam, there was just one in the chat there about the ability for Kanban boards to be customized. Absolutely, this is all using the standard SAFe nomenclature. But as we know, some organizations want to tweak it and change it or have their different approaches to Agile. Everyone's got their own flavor. All of this is simple and easy to configure within the same user experience that you're seeing from Adam.
Yeah, it's very, very key. Probably one of the first questions that we get asked from customers as well is, can we change the name? Can we change the lanes? Can we change the card types, right? Yeah, so everything's configurable within the Kanban boards. Okay. All right. So when we talk about then managing value, again, we showed WIP limits and policies around that within the boards, but we also then talk about capacity allocation. How do we look at distribution of work? How do we then start to incorporate some form of prioritization, right? Which is key to I think a lot of the agile work that most organizations do. How do we then start to bring some of the collaborative things that we're learning along the way through delivery, and then how do we tie what we've actually achieved back to objectives and key results, and then that alignment back to strategy? Okay, so again, we've talked a little bit about WIP limits and the lane processes. We've shown those components here. WIP limits can be set up on a board level within Agile Place as either the number of cards within a particular lane, or the combination of points or user value within those individual cards. So it really depends on how those teams are delivering work that makes sense for them to talk about capacity of work within their particular areas. Capacity allocation, again, we'll go through this a little bit, being able to get an understanding of what people are working on, right? And being able to get an understanding of how they're working on it in different phases of the process of SAFe as well. So are they working on specific things or card types within a particular phase of the process, right? So we're able to get some analysis around that through distribution reports, which we'll see in a second. Prioritization of card scoring, again, really important, and being able to get an understanding of part of your PI planning processes at not just the team level, but also at the portfolio level, being able to get an understanding of what is going to provide the most value within here. Planview comes with sort of 3 standardized prioritization models, but we also offer our customers the ability to build their own out. So they can actually then go and configure their own model to be able to get their prioritized work through there as well. And we'll have a look at that through that. Iteration retrospective. So again, at the end of every quarter or every month or every stand-up in some cases, with some organizations being able to have a place where people can actually understand, what's happened throughout that particular iteration or quarter, and be able to then start to use that feedback and build that back into their processes has been really key. So we'll start to talk about some of the whiteboards and instant coffee items as well. And then obviously linking it back to OKRs. Again, it's a bit of a hot topic for us at the moment. I'm not sure whether it comes across your day-to-day job, but a lot of our customers are wanting to be able to get a sense of all the objectives and key results at multiple levels, whether it's value stream, enterprise, and being able to link all the work that's being done back into that, so they can track that at different levels within here as well. Okay, so let's jump back up to the portfolio level. So we talked about WIP limits. So again, the board has a number of different elements which we can start to talk about capacity. We can either be based on the job size. So when you go into any one of these cards, we have the option to size it in some way and being able to get an understanding of how big this item is. And then the WIP limit could be based on the size, or alternatively can be based on the number of big rocks or small rocks that you define within that page, right? So in this instance, or in this particular board, we're doing it based on the number of epics that go into it, that go into a particular lane or a swim lane, and then that determines our capability or capacity for that area. When it comes to reporting out of Agile Place, there's some standard reports around burn downs and who's assigned to what, and the exceptions around block cards and flow, which we'll go into a little bit earlier. But the one key point here is more all around sort of distribution, and how work is being distributed within the actual board itself. And as that renders, we want to be able to get an understanding of the different types of work that's been done within the different types of stages within there as well. I'm assuming this is the part where IT is going to fail me and it's going to take too long to load. There's always going to be one time. Bear with me while that loads. Probably needs a refresh. Probably get back to that one a little bit later. Sorry, we'll just want to jump back here for a second. Retrospectives, prioritizations. Okay, prioritization. Let's jump to that one
do the
first.
WizKiv stuff, Adam, because that was a question that was a lot further up. So yeah.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so again, when it comes to prioritization, within each of the boards, each level of, I suppose, the roles around SAFE have this concept or this ability to then start to prioritize cards and work that are on those boards. So up on the top left-hand corner here, we have the ability to start to look at different models for scoring work. So what we're trying to do is look at work within this not started area, most likely in the backlog, to be able to determine what work do we want to prioritize to actually then start to get going and start to move into that execution layer. And it's really simple the way that and very agile, the way that this prioritization model then starts to look at things is it starts to look at cards that sit in a particular area. And I'll move a few things back here just so we can do a real quick prioritization model. And I'll remove that and then add cards from the backlog. So I've got 3 things here in the backlog here, right, as an example around prioritization. And we're using weighted shortest job first. And it has different elements that we are essentially trying to rank for these 3 initiatives. It's based on value, time criticality, risk reduction, and effort. And then it's going to come out with a result at the end of the day. And what the end users, and again, think about this as being more of a group who are going to be deciding, who or how are these items going to be prioritized. What they're going to be doing across all of the elements is they're going to be plotting these particular projects on this graph here to say what value is it bringing and how confident are we on the value that it's going to bring for that particular element. And we do that across value, time criticality, and risk reduction and effort, right? So, as we start to plot these, you'll see on the right-hand side, it's starting to plot different scores for where these particular initiatives and work is going to sit. And then hopefully by the end of it, and as the prioritization model goes, is that it's going to come up with the projects which are the highest prioritized projects, that things we want to lean into, things that potentially we may want to steer clear of, or if they rank really low, they need either more investigation or we need to research them a little bit more. And then the scores come up on the right-hand side. So if I apply those scores here, you'll notice that each of these cards now have a ranking, right? 79, 59, and 48. So back to the end user, we're able then to say, well, from a value stream or portfolio level, this is the highest rank initiative that we actually want to kick off because it's representing the most value for this particular value stream and for us as an organization. So realistically, that should be coming straight back into the execution frame. So from a prioritization model, this is how we do it.
Adam, just quickly on that, I'll ask the question.
Sure.
WizGIF is great for scoring. Are there any other ways in which you can score the cards? Are there like other methods you can use? Oh, well, okay, brilliant.
Yeah, there are. And as I said, here's one that I was using with a customer of mine. We talked about adding in other prioritization models as well. So it could be as simple as value versus cost, right? So you might just want to say, okay, really quickly, what's the value, what's the cost, and that's going to prioritize it. It really depends on how agile your prioritization model wants to be, or how complex and governed that prioritization may want to be. Okay, so you define, or the definition of the model can actually be defined within Agile Place and then applied to the applicable boards. All right. So when it comes then to collaboration, I'm just doing a time check. 1 p.m. Are we finishing at 1? Is that the plan? Okay, all right. So
that is the plan.
I'll get moving. No worries. So again, when it comes to collaboration, we have this concept of whiteboards, and then the whiteboards again can be related to those individual Kanban boards to conduct different types of activities, right? So different teams are going to work in different ways. There are some default boards that people can use. So if we're looking at trying to run a retrospective, as the quarter is going, as the month's going, as the week is going, all of these different boards can then capture different items within there. From here, if there is an action item or a risk or a new piece of work, a new feature that actually comes out of it, we can actually export and create cards directly from these whiteboards as well. So the connectivity of where we're collaborating and all the things that we're raising can actually then be tied back to cards on the board as well. Okay, so again, a space for the end users to be able to really quickly be able to do their work, do their retrospectives, do the things that they would normally do at that team level on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and be able to keep all that tied into here, and then start to enable that connection back to work if work is driven out of those sessions as well. OKRs. So again, the relationship then back to OKRs. I'm going to come all the way back to the original place where we were talking about. Again, OKRs, we start to look at in different lenses as well. So whether it's at portfolio program level or program, these widgets are surfacing up information of where the OKRs live and where they're managed. But we start to get a sense from the widgets themselves around how we're tracking on them, right? And we track them on two different lenses, so at the objective and the key result level. So what we're seeing here is that at the objective level, we've got 7 in progress. Oh, so we've got all these ones in progress, but 7 are behind, 3 are on track, 4 are on head. If I want to see what's working well, these are the objectives that are in progress and they're on track. But what's actually behind, we've got all these different objectives that are moving behind. If I dive down into the key results area, we get a little bit more detailed because there's typically more key results associated to your objectives than the number of objectives that we're having at the organization and portfolio level. We can then start to get a sight of, well, we've got this key result here, which is use technology to drive demand. If I click into that, then it's going to bring me to the detail where we then start to manage all of our objectives and key results within the platform. So again, this is our link back to strategy within the Planview platform, and this allows us to be able to define, or again, almost this connected, cascading level of objectives that organization capture, not just at the enterprise level, but then down to portfolio level programs, and then all the way down into their teams, depending on how far the organization then starts to distribute their OKR components, right? So this key result that we're looking at here is associated to a parent objective. We have the metrics at which we're measuring these items, and then what the target value of the actual KR is, any progress entries that have come in over time, and then the graphic to be able to represent whether we are tracking behind or ahead or behind within here. The roll-up that we saw up through here is the combination of all of those key results and all of the objectives that have been set at a particular level, right? And the widget can then define whether we want to represent a chart here to say, show me just the objectives at the enterprise level, how's that tracking overall, or I could go down to individual teams. And this is the link back into the strategic themes from a SAFE perspective. Does that make sense? Any questions on OKRs? I know I have 7 minutes left, so I've got to get moving. Measuring flow.
Get on with the flow, Adam.
Yeah. Okay. So again, we'll talk about flow metrics. So this is obviously a big introduction into SAFe 6.0. Heavily sort of embedded now within the SAFe framework at all levels, right? So being able to understand flow metrics, the distribution of work, and how we do that, but also being able to look at it from an enterprise wide, not just a value stream wide. And again, these are just the concepts of the metrics that we're looking at here, whether it's flow, efficiency, velocity, distribution. What types of work are we looking at? And so I'm going to go straight into that. So again, from the board here, again, we talk about flow at not just the individual product and or value stream level. The real value here is being able to get an understanding of flow across the enterprise. And this is what we're showing here, is that across all products within an enterprise, we're able to get some insights at the portfolio level about how an organization is shifting from this project to product area, right? And being able to get an understanding across all the products that are being measured around flow about how well our product and product management discipline is going, right? And we start to get insights around products with low feature delivery or products with high defect delivery, right? And products that are potentially neglecting risk or neglecting debt, and how that potentially may affect how the organization is actually run. When we then delve down into individual products, we can then say, okay, well, we've got all these products and value streams that we're trying to manage, but let's look at one in particular, which I've created here around SAFe VSM. This is now going into an individual product or a value stream to be able to get an understanding across this specific value stream around the velocity of work, how fast are we actually pushing things through. These metrics are as of now and in the past view of the world, right? So it's not an indicator of how things will be in the future, but it's a good indicator of potentially how things will be in the future if things don't change. And it's about trying to get a balance of what's going to be right for that particular value stream. Because some people and the product owners may be looking at this going, well, we've got a reduction in delivering of features, and why is that, right? So we're trying to get insights as to the information that's coming back at us from our flow metrics to be able to get an understanding about what's going on. The flow distribution is really just showing what type of work are we working on. So is it all feature related? Is it defect, risk, debt, right? And over time, how does that actually impact the work that we want to be doing for these individual products as well? How fast are we going, and what's the load on our teams, right? So does the load or the extra load actually decrease the amount of work that's actually being delivered in the flow time that we're looking at? And then again, flow efficiency, right? About how fast is the work going through all of the products and all of the processes that are in our area. Now, this relies on really diving into an organization's ecosystem, right? So if you think of how work flows through an organization, it might come through ServiceNow as a ticket. It might then go into a portfolio system, which might go into Jira, and then it goes into GitHub for management or release management, right? It's being able to tie in all of those processes with all those technologies to be able to get an overall understanding of work from the time that it actually gets created to the time it actually then gets delivered, right? So that's a really important part of the capabilities within the Planview product. Okay, and these are just some overviews for individual value streams. Ooh, I've got 2 minutes left. The last section was really just around PI planning in Agile Place, which I think we've talked about a lot. So I think I might just wrap it up there with 2 minutes to go. How does that sound? I think we've covered the majority of the components that we wanted to get through. Whew, I'll come up for air.
Well done, Adam. Some folks may have some additional time. I don't know. Are you folks on a hard stop?
I am.
You are. Joe is in demand. All right, we may have to have you back sometime to talk more about all the awesome stuff you do. Certainly, as you update your product, feel free to reach out and let us know that you have more to share, and we'd be happy to learn more.
Yeah, and I think just based on some of the questions that we saw in there, it seems like the logical next step might be to look at the lean portfolio management capability and how that interacts. So we would love an opportunity to talk to you and the team again. So really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Let's get that on the calendar and look at how this supports LPM. Thank you everyone who came along today. Thank you heaps, Joe and Adam, for your time and expertise. And I will see many of you online at our next meetup. And Joe and Adam, no doubt we will talk soon. Have a wonderful Friday, everyone.
Thanks for the opportunity, everyone. Enjoy the weekend.
Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.